I've got some exciting news for you. And no, the exciting news isn't that I'm now using VS Code instead of Sublime Text. I still love my Sublime Text code editor, but just to change things up, I'm going to use VS Code for now, and I'm going to talk about ES6 modules in Node. You see, up until now, we had to use the require syntax, which is what we call the common JS syntax with Node. Originally, Node was created with this syntax in mind because JavaScript wasn't created with modules in mind. They never had the import-export syntax that we had with ES6. So because Node was created before we even had that, they had to create their own module system, which is how we got require and this common JS syntax. But as of Node version 12, they now have ES6 style module imports and exports. So the good news is that if you're watching this video and you have the latest version of Node, then congratulations, you can now start to change from require to using import-export keywords. So let me show you, based on what we've just done and what we've learned about modules, how we can convert this to ES6. So the first thing we can do with script2.js is to, well, actually you can remove this entire thing. And we can just simply say export const large number. So now this gets exported. So I can save that. Next, in here, instead of the require syntax, let's comment that out and let's say import. And in here, we'll import, doing destructuring, the large number that we exported. So remember, we did export large number, and we're going to say from script2.js, grab large number. So this object destructuring simply says out of the script2 object that we're going to import, just grab the property large number. So I can say from, and in here, dot script2.js. So now that I've imported large number and I did object destructuring, I don't need to call script2.largeNumber. Instead, I can just simply do large number. So will this work? Well, let's test it out. I'm going to open up the terminal here. And in here, I got to make sure I'm in the right folder. So I should cd into the ES6 folder. And in here, I have the script and script2.js. Now, if I do this, do you think it will work? Well, the first thing I want to do is check my Node version. So if I do node-v, and you should do the same, what's the number that you get? In here, I see that I have a pretty high Node version. As a matter of fact, it's higher than version 12. And if you remember, with version 12, we got ES6 imports. So this should work, right? Well, let's test it out. I'm going to say node script.js. Oh, syntax error. Cannot use import statement outside a module. Why is that? I mean, I have the right version. Luckily, Node gives us some hints. Warning. To load an ES6 module, set type module in package.json or use the MJS extension. And this is a little gotcha. Because Node was created with this common JS import-export in mind, we need to actually specify how we want Node to read these files so we know that we're using the ES6 syntax. Because remember, it's different from a browser. So we have two options here. And I also want to show you how you can find this out on the documentation website for Node. Usually what you would do is Google ECMAScript 6 Node.js. You'll probably get to the Node.js documentation. And we can see here we have modules, ECMAScript modules. And let's go to enabling. And if we click on enabling, we see over here, all right, there you go. We need to add the MJS file extension. Inside of package.json, we have to update the type field. So if I click on the type field, I'll read about it here and I say, oh, import statements of JS files are treated as ES modules if the nearest parent package.json contains type module. So this is a good way to learn how to read the documentation. Remember, the answer is probably always inside of the documentation. So let's follow their advice. What if I rename these to MJS and this to... If I now run this, do you think this will work? Actually, I have to fix one more thing, right? I have to make sure that the syntax while we're importing is MJS. For fun, let's see if I can do it without the file extension. Let's save here and run this. Cannot find module. So we actually have to specify the file extension. And if I run this again, hey, check that out. Everything works. Our ES6 imports works, and we just followed what they've recommended. Name your files MJS. But there was another option too, right? The package.json option. So let's rename this back to .js. Some people really don't like the syntax MJS, and they prefer this method instead. So again, what we'll do is we'll run this again and make sure we change this to .js, back to .js. And if we run our code, it'll give us an error because, again, we have to add type module inside of package.json. We don't really have package.json, right? But we can just run the command npm init and then -y to say yes to all the options to simply create our package.json file. There you go. So in here, all we need to do is just simply inside of package.json, wherever we want, add type module so that it reads the package.json and says, oh yeah, they're going to be using ES6 modules. So if I save this and now go back and run my code, look at that. It all works. How cool is that? Now go ahead and play around with ES6 modules. As you start working with more and more Node.js code, you're going to see more import statements than require statements like we have before. However, because a lot of code bases still use the require syntax, if you go on npm, for example, and try to download packages, a lot of them still suggest that you use the require syntax. And that is because you're not sure that everybody has the latest version of Node. Some people might be running a Node version that is lower than version 12. In that case, the code isn't going to work. And that's why for the rest of the course, and even for the final Smart Brain project, I've left our Node files with the require syntax so that anybody, any student taking this course can run those without any errors. But feel free to update them if you ever want with ES6 imports. But for now, it's always a good idea to keep the CommonJS syntax to make sure that if your code is being run on different systems and you don't have control over the Node version, well, then you can make sure that the require syntax is going to work for everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.